not as big of a problem as we feared it was going to be for Texans safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He was carted off from practice down the road from me at the Greenbrier, although it's still like 3 hours away. It's West Virginia. They sang Almost Heaven this week. That was kind of a nice thing. But C.J. Gardner-Johnson avoids a torn ACL. According to NFL media, they're still doing further tests. But, that was the big concern. ACL tear would have been done for the season, traded from the Eagles to the Texans, just part of this effort to take a good defense and just give it that edge, give it a little championship pedigree, a guy who can bring in a new Super Bowl ring and try to inspire the troops. I don't know how long he's going to miss, but he's not going to miss the whole season.
Yeah, good. And you look at Gardner-Johnson, he's one of those guys, isn't he, Mike, that, for a couple of years, whoever he goes to, for a couple of years, you say, wow, I'm so glad we had that jolt. And he brings a different energy, brings a different edge to our defense. And he did it in Philadelphia a couple of times. I think he'll do it with the Texans. And at times, I know it didn't work out the way he wanted it to with the Lions, but he was that guy too. He just has that personality where he just brings something different to the game. You know who was like that too, and the opponents didn't always like it. Remember Bernard Pollard? I think he's a former Texan too. Bernie Pollard would come in there and, the offense would look around like he's just a little on the edge. He's just a little too unpredictable. I don't know what's going to happen with him, but teammates love it because it's just everybody is not built that way. Everybody's not wired that way, and it just elevates the entire defense.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson said not that long ago, I'm looking for the story here and it's not popping up, but he claimed the Eagles traded him because they couldn't stand having a competitor around. Well, of course, they all want competitors, but he's one of those guys that just sometimes pushes it too far, sometimes forgets that his teammates are his teammates, and that desire to compete can become an issue at practice, and there's a line that you don't want to cross. And he's a guy who is so intensely competitive, and it's part of what makes him great, but there are moments where, okay, we're going to have to make a tough decision here. We can't have this guy around. It's going to be more counterproductive than productive, and that was the decision the Eagles made. For the Texans, they want that. They want that edge. They want somebody that's going to come in. And, the Texans are at a spot right now where they're not content to be a Final 8 team. They've been Final 8 the last 2 years. They gave the Ravens a good game in the playoffs in the divisional round 2023. They gave the Chiefs a better game than people expected last year. They want to start winning those games. And sometimes you got to, you've got to rip off the Band-Aid. You got to fire your offensive coordinator. You got to gut your offensive line. And you maybe need a guy with a little edge in your secondary who's going to push guys to be better than they currently are.
You know what, Mike? They're a team, if you think about it, they're a team that is often overlooked because they're at a point in their development. They're a little ahead of schedule. So when DeMeco Ryans goes to the playoffs, his first year as a head coach, that would have been good enough for some people. Hey, here's a first-year coach. They go to the playoffs. They lose in the playoffs. Good job. No. They go to the playoffs. They win their first playoff game. Then they go to Baltimore. They get humbled, just crushed by the Ravens. So that's farther ahead than a lot of first-year coaches or even second or third-year coaches can think about. Then they come back and make the playoffs again and win another playoff game. And so for a guy who's going into his third season as a head coach to be looking at it saying, we got to get to the next level, usually third-year coaches aren't thinking like that. They're just thinking about, hey, building the program. Let's see if we can make the playoffs now. Let's see if we can win a playoff game. They've already won their playoff game. They know they got a good quarterback, but they're looking for something more. And I think they're often overlooked. They're a really good team. And see, Gardner-Johnson is exactly what that kind of team needs. They do need that borderline reckless energy, that urgency to get them to another level. They're very good. Their defense is, their corners are outstanding. I think they have top 5 corners in the league. When you talk about Stingley and Lassiter, those guys are great. And then you add Gardner-Johnson. Yeah, I mean, the Texans. Yeah, the Texans should be. Watch out for them. I really like what they're trying to do.
They're in the Super Bowl window. You know, in 2023, no one was paying attention to them. We all thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league. They had turned the corner. They played all their games at 1 o'clock Eastern on Sunday until the last game of the season that got moved to Saturday night. It was the de facto AFC South Championship game against the Colts. They win that, and then, they go to the playoffs. Like, the Browns are going to mop up the floor with them, and they beat the Browns. Like, what? And then last year, they're regressing. They're taking a step back. C.J. Stroud's not as good as he was. They're winning a weak division. And then in come the Chargers. Chargers are going to mop up the floor with them. Wait, what? The Texans won. So they're there. And they're doing what they have to do to not stay there. They're not content to tread water. Hey, we'd be a Final Eight team. We tell the world we want to win the Super Bowl every year, but come on, only one team can do that. We're good enough. And sometimes good enough is good enough. They're trying to be great. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.